Got a pile of leftover yarn you don't know what to do with? Whether it's mini skeins, scraps from past projects, or a gorgeous advent calendar you still haven't touched, today I'm sharing patterns that will finally put those yarn treasures to good use. In today's video we are going to have a look at some of the best patterns that make the most out of your yarn scraps. Whether you have some leftovers from another project, some mini skeins, or an advent calendar you still haven't used, I am going to show you a number of different patterns that are all very beautiful and perfect for using up those scraps. Whether you like to combine lots of different colors or are looking for a quick stash busting project, there is going to be something for everyone. By the way, if we haven't met before, my name is Annika and I'm coming to you from Germany. I am a natural yarn dyer as well as an avid knitter, and I basically love everything that is related to the fiber arts. Let's get started. We are going to start with 4 different knitting patterns from Laine's book 52 Weeks of Scrap Yarn that came out in April of 2025. Now these 4 patterns are all only available as part of the book and not as individual patterns. So if the book is not interesting to you, I am going to put timestamps in the video so that you can simply skip ahead to the other knitting patterns. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to Laine for very kindly gifting me this copy here. And let's get into the patterns, shall we? The first pattern that I would like to show you is the one from the cover because I think it is just absolutely beautiful. It is called Konpeito Candy by Hiromi Glover, and it is a beautiful shawl that uses up lots of your leftovers. Now this shawl pattern is designed with 5 different colorways, but of course you can use as many or as little different colors as you like depending on what you have. And just for reference, you will need approximately 200 grams or 800 yards or 730 meters of the main color in a fingering weight yarn, and a total of 200 grams, 800 yards or 730 meters of the contrast colors in total. And it is worked at a gauge of 33 stitches and 46 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 4, which corresponds to 3.5 millimeter needle. The finished measurements of this shawl are 12 inches by 80 inches, which corresponds to 204 centimeters per 30.5 centimeters. It is a striped scarf that is worked in one piece, so it's worked flat back and forth. It features an easy to memorize stitch pattern that is repeated over 4 rows, alternating 2 rows in the main color and then 2 rows in the contrast color. This scarf was inspired by a traditional Japanese sugar candy that is small, brightly colored and has a spiky surface. And the designer states that the stitch pattern is easy to memorize and fun to knit. Next up, let's have a look at a sweater knitting pattern, and it is this beautiful embroidered sweater called Aster by Elena Solir Janso. And I absolutely love those embroidery details on the sweater. It is knitted at a gauge of 16 stitches and 25 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 5 and a US 7, which corresponds to a 3.75 and a 4.5 millimeter needle. It comes in 10 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 36 up to 70 inches or 90 up to 175 centimeters. The recommended ease is 5 to 6 inches or 12.5 up to 15 centimeters of positive ease. This is a circular yoke design that is knitted top down and in the round. Now, of course, this particular design doesn't use up that much scrap yarn, but I think it is still a very beautiful and fun idea. For the embroidered flowers, you will need either 2 strands of fingering weight yarn held together or 1 strand of a worsted weight yarn, and you will need 23 inches or 60 centimeters of yarn for each of the flowers. But of course, if you have more scrap yarn that you would like to use in that project, you could also add more flowers to the sweater or even do a all over flower embroidery on it. The next design that I would like to talk about is a pair of socks, and this pattern is called Gadzillion by Annika, and it is knitted with fingering weight sock yarns. So you will need approximately 14 grams or 65 yards or 60 meters of the fingering weight sock yarn for each stripe motif for the contrast color, and the pattern is shown with 5 different contrast colors, but of course you can adapt that to your own preferences. And the gauge comes out to 33 stitches and 33 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 0, which corresponds to a 2.0 millimeter needle. This design comes in 3 different sizes, and the finished measurements are 7 to 9.5 inches or 18 to 24 centimeters for the leg or foot circumference. And the recommended ease is 0 to 1 inch or 0 to 2.5 centimeters of negative ease. These cuff down socks begin with a twisted 1x1 rib and are worked in the round with a peasant heel, so they are worked from the cuff down, and there is stranded color work all over the leg and the feet. Let's move on to the next pattern, and I would like to show you another sweater knitting pattern, and this one is called Chromelia by Marina Storm. And it uses 4 contrast colors and 1 main color in a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 22 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches in the colorwork motif. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 7, which corresponds to 4 and 4.5 millimeter needles. This design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 34.75 up to 66.25 inches or 86.5 up to 165.5 centimeters. The recommended ease is 4 to 6.5 inches or 10 to 16 centimeters of positive ease. It is knitted top down in the round, and the designer states about her inspiration that the colorwork of this sweater tells a story of balance and beauty, inspired by the interplay of colors found in the Greek landscapes. Think of wildflowers against a clear sky. Now, if you like this particular style of sweater but do not want to purchase the whole book just for this one pattern, I wanted to show you an alternative option. This is a design by Rebecca Clow called Kintra, and it came out in February of 2025. It has been written both for a fingering weight gauge and a decay weight gauge, all within the one pattern, which I think is wonderful because it gives you a lot of options. And you can also use between 2 different colors and 25 different colorways. So this would be a perfect way to use an advent calendar set, for example. The gauge of the sweater is 25 stitches and 32 rows per 10 centimeters or 4 inches for the fingering weight version, and 20 stitches and 24 rows per 10 centimeters or 4 inches for the decay weight version. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 3, which corresponds to a 4 and 3.5 millimeter needle for the fingering weight version, and a US 3 and a US 6, which corresponds to a 3.25 and a 4 millimeter needle for the decay weight version. The design comes in 10 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 32.25 up to 68 inches or 81.5 up to 173 centimeters for the fingering weight yarn, and 32.25 up to 67.75 inches or 82 up to 172 centimeters for the decay weight yarn. The recommended ease is 3.5 up to 6.25 inches or 8 up to 16 centimeters of positive ease. And Kintra is worked top down in the round. It has a round yoke construction with this 1x1 color work. The yoke is then finished with Raglan increases to improve the fit, and it also includes short rows. And the designer Rebecca Clow states in the pattern description that this is a perfect colorwork project for beginners because you alternate between the colors every stitch, so you do not have any long floats in the back that you need to catch. Let's move on to another sweater design, and I would like to show you this design by Summer Lee, which is called the Stash Dive Raglan. It came out in January of 2020 and it uses 2 different yarns held together. So you will need a worsted weight yarn and a fingering weight yarn to create a bulky weight gauge of 18 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 5 and a US 7, which corresponds to 3.75 and 4.5 millimeters. The finished bust measurements range from 29 up to 64 inches, or 73.75 up to 162.5 centimeters. The recommended ease is 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters. This design is knitted seamlessly from the bottom up. The sleeves are knit separately and then joined to the body at the underarm with a raglan yoke. And you have 2 different options for the neck. She includes instructions for both a crew and a turtleneck. And additionally, there are options for a wider neck or a more fitted neck. The pattern includes tutorials for working with scrap yarn to achieve this mild blended effect that you can see in the pictures. And the tutorials also detail 2 different methods for dealing with the numbers of ends that you are inevitably going to have. So you can deal with those ends as you go and you won't have to weave in a million ends when you're done knitting. I also wanted to read the designer's inspiration to you that she has put on the Ravelry project page. She says, "The Stash Dive Raglan was created out of a drive to use my ever-growing collection of leftover sock yarns, odds and ends. I have a basket in my closet full of these colorful little balls and half-used skeins that were calling to me every time I dug around in my stash. Using what I already have and trying to cut down on my consumption was important to me, though oh so difficult when there is so much gorgeous yarn in my Instagram feed every day. Financially, it can be hard to keep up with all the things we want to make, so I set out to design a sweater that would allow knitters to simply dive into their stash and make something full of life and color out of treasured favorites." And I absolutely love that, and this is for sure a pattern that I would really like to make myself sometime in the future. Next up is a pattern series that I absolutely adore and that I am actually currently knitting 2 versions of myself. And I'm talking about the Sea Glass series by Wool & Pine. And this is what I am currently working on. So this is the Sea Glass Mini. So this is their tea version for kids, but you can also get that as a pattern for adults. And they also have a sweater knitting pattern in this series, a cardigan, a hat, a cowl, mittens, and I hope I'm not missing something. So this is a very beautiful way, in my opinion, to use up your leftovers, and you can again use as many or as little of your different colorways as you like. I have here in this version used 4 different colors, but if you have a look at the Ravelry project pages of other people, you can see that you can create really unique, very colorful and beautiful pieces with these patterns. By the way, I have created a whole bundle full of knitting patterns that are perfect for using up scraps, leftovers, mini skeins, and those advent kits. If you like, you can have a look. I am going to link everything in the description box below for you. The pattern that I wanted to talk about specifically within this Sea Glass series by Wool & Pine is the Sea Glass Cardigan. And this came out in June of 2024. It is knitted with a gauge of 20 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 8, which corresponds to 4 and 5 millimeter needles. This design comes in 10 different sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 32 up to 68 inches or 81 up to 173 centimeters. The recommended ease is 2 to 6 inches, which corresponds to 5 to 15 centimeters. So this is a V-neck raglan cardigan that is knitted from the top down. And the only purl stitches are in the ribbing for the shawl color or the button band, hem and the cuffs. The pattern also comes with video tutorials that have a, like they state, game-changing solution for handling yarn ends. They have a stickless I-cord technique that eliminates the need to weave in any ends, which I think sounds absolutely fantastic. And you also don't need to purl in color work. And in addition, there's also no sticking involved. So that seems like a very straightforward version for a colorwork cardigan like this one. So the whole cardigan is knitted in 1x1 colorwork, and it comes with two different options for the color. You can either do the shawl color or you can opt for a classic button band. And I think this is a very beautiful design that is perfect for using up all of the different leftovers that you have laying around. Next up is a very cute home accessory that I would like to show you, and it is also a free pattern. It is called Summer Cottage by Frankie Brown, and it came out in July of 2023. It is knitted with different DK weight yarns, but of course you can adapt that to whatever yarn weight you would like to use. The gauge comes out to 26 stitches and 36 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle size used is a US 3, which corresponds to 3.25 millimeters. The finished measurements of this cottage are 14 centimeters wide and tall and 11 centimeters deep, which corresponds to 5.5 inches per 4.5 inches. And it uses only simple embroidery stitches for these added embroidery details on the cottage. And there are also photographs included in the pattern that help you to create a beautiful cottage of your own step by step. I also wanted to read the designer's inspiration to you. And it says that the cottage is inspired by the stone cottages of the Cotswolds in England, and that the walls are decorated with lots of flowers, but that there is plenty of scope for you to add your own decorations, and some or all of the flowers could be replaced, for example, with smaller buttons or beads. The next pattern that I would like to show you is called Trove by Emma Duché. And this came out as part of the Pom Pom magazine issue 30, but is now also available as an individual pattern. It was published in August of 2019, and it uses 5 different yarns in total, but of course, again, this is completely adaptable to your own preferences. This design is knitted with a sport weight yarn with a gauge of 22 stitches and 40 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 4, which corresponds to 3 and 3.5 millimeter needles. Comes in 8 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 37.75 up to 66 inches or 96 up to 168 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 6 to 12 inches or 15 to 30 centimeters of positive ease. The sweater is knitted from the top down, and it is shaped with short rows for the shoulders. The front and back are then knitted flat and joined under the underarms, and the body is knitted in the round to the hem. Afterwards you pick up the sleeves and knit them in the round down to the wrist. Let's have a look at another accessory now, and I would like to show you the Leftovers shawl by Kiri Fitzgerald. This came out in May of 2015 and is knitted at a gauge of 24 stitches and 37 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 5, which corresponds to 3.75 millimeters. The shawl comes in one size with finished measurements of 117 centimeters or 46 inches for the wingspan and 35.5 centimeters or 14 inches for the center width. The shawl is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and is designed to use up all of these little bits of leftover yarn that is too pretty to part with. The pattern is worked in all over garter stitch and includes short rows to get this beautiful crescent shape. And the designer states on the Ravelry project page that one of her testers, or I think maybe some of her testers, reversed the main color and the contrast colors, and that you should have a look at those pictures and get inspired by it because it creates a completely different look. Let's have a look at another neck piece, and I would like to show you the Crystal Cavern Wrap by Katie H. Carroll. And this design came out in January of 2021 and is knitted at a gauge of 18 stitches and 29 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 5, which corresponds to 3.75 millimeters. It also comes in only one size, but of course you can easily adapt that to your own liking. Finished measurements are 22.5 inches per 100.5 inches or 57 per 255 centimeters. The pattern was designed with an advent calendar, so it uses lots of different colorways, and the lace panels alternate between this diamond and mesh patterns with 2 gradient colors blended in each. There's a neutral background color that separates the lace panels for an interesting visual contrast, and this pattern contains both written and charted instructions. Next up, let's have a look at a blanket pattern, and I would like to show you the Bits and Bobs by K.F. Jones. This design was created with 2 fingering weight yarns held together, and that comes out to a gauge of 17 stitches and 23 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. It also comes in one size, but of course it's very easy to adjust. I would like to read the designer's inspiration to you because I think it is very sweet, and she says that the inspiration for this pattern came from my mom and my dad. My dad absolutely loved to go fishing, and my mom knitted him big thick jumpers to keep him warm. I have a vivid memory of mom knitting those jumpers using the same stitch pattern that I've used for the blanket. It produces such a warm and cozy fabric, perfect for keeping out the chilly English weather. She also states that this is a highly addictive knit and also very meditative. And the pattern comes with 5 different video tutorials covering all of the techniques that you will need to knit this blanket, which I think is absolutely wonderful. Since you are holding 2 different strands of a fingering weight yarn double all throughout this blanket, you get this beautiful watercolory effect, which I personally quite like. And the designer also mentions on the Ravelry page that although the stitch looks like it might be a brioche stitch, it is actually not, and there's also no purling involved. Now, I hope you were able to get some inspiration from these beautiful patterns and that you feel motivated to give your beautiful leftovers a second life. I feel like as knitters we always have some leftovers laying around, and it sometimes can be a bit tricky to find projects to incorporate those tiny scraps into, but there are so many beautiful patterns out there that are designed for just that purpose. And if you would like to get even more inspiration, I have actually filmed a similar video to that last year, where I also talked about different knitting patterns that are perfectly suited for leftovers and scrap yarns. I am going to link it for you on the screen. And I'll see you next time. Happy knitting. Bye guys.